as an American public, I have an interesting question I want to pose to all of you. How much do you really know about nonprofits and the role they play in the viability of today's society? Well, I've got some statistical evidence I want to share with all of you. According to the first comprehensive poll published by the Associated Press and the University of Indiana's Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, it found public attitudes on both foundations and nonprofits offer signs that charitable organizations are more trusted than other institutions such as business, government, and the news media. However, it also shows some warning signs, given how little Americans know about the function of nonprofits and their pessimism that charities actually have the ability to make an impact on the world stage. The study found the following. 48% of Americans believe that nonprofits are on the wrong track, and only a third believe that charities contribute meaningfully to the functioning of society. However, perhaps most surprising is that only 5% of Americans believe that their immediate family or someone that they know has been impacted positively by nonprofits. 1 out of every 11 Americans works for some form of charitable nonprofit, according to the Associated Press. Angela Burgess empowers others to transform the world, and she knows a thing or two about nonprofits and the true function they have on societal life. She's the best-selling author of Are You on the Right Bus? Navigating Change on the Road to Success, and the president and CEO of Broad Oaks Consulting. There, she serves as a trusted advisor for nonprofit organizations in the areas of strategic planning, revenue generation, and investment development. She also serves as a volunteer for foster children. She's involved in the prison ministry. And if that wasn't enough, she also caps her resume with being on the International Committee for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. This week, she joined me to have a conversation about the viability of nonprofits, their function within society, and how we can take a more inclusive lens to operating them more efficiently. It was a wide-ranging conversation that covered many topics, so it's one that I'm eager to share with all of you right now. So without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn how you help others live transformational lifestyles, my friend. Great to see you, and happy cold Wednesday to you. It's freezing outside. It's a perfect day to stay in and do a podcast, right?
You are correct.
Absolutely. So, Angela, I know you work to help others sort of live a transformational lifestyle and really level up in every aspect of their lives. So I'm wondering if you can give me a 360-degree view of who you are and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Well, thank you for the warm introduction. When you said that, live a transformational life, honest to goodness, it gives me goosebumps because I think inherently in each of us, the most powerful attribute that any of us has is the ability to inspire and empower others. And as you look, a 360-degree view of me, I've had several different iterations of my career. It's not because I'm not focused. It's not because I fail. It's because I continue to build, trying to work towards my purpose and shining God's light as brightly as I possibly can. Over the time, I'm a business person. I'm a business owner. I'm a volunteer. I'm a wife. I'm a stepmother. I volunteer with foster kids as a court-appointed guardian ad litem. I've taken responsibility and ownership over a child with intellectual and developmental disabilities who doesn't have anybody else. I'm an author. I am an athlete. And above all else, Kevin, I am an avid TV watcher. I love to watch TV.
Oh, we'll go down the vanity route for a second. So, what's your favorite TV show or TV series to watch, my
Oh
friend?
my goodness. Oh gosh. Well, I guess it would have to, it just varies depending on what's going on. I think like a lot of people, I love Breaking Bad. Like couldn't get enough of it, binged it for sure. I did enjoy The Crown. I watched that too. I really loved Sons of Anarchy. I try to do kind of Downton Abbey. I'm very equal opportunity when it comes to shows, whether it's like a motorcycle gang or something violent happening in Mexico or a show about, people in Great Britain in a far gone time. I love great stories and great storytelling.
Well, diversity of perspective is a powerful thing, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, Angela, tell me, what do you think the term transformational difference means to you?
What does the term transformational difference mean?
Yeah, what does
Yeah.
that term mean to you?
I think that's such an interesting question because really when it comes down to it, it's the ability to transform someone else's life with something that you do for them, say to them, or a way in which you can change their perspective and their outlook. And so what's fascinating to me about that is sometimes it's just something as simple as a smile. Smiling at someone in the grocery store can transform their day. Giving someone the opportunity, like even when you're driving, right, where someone cuts in front of you, you don't know what's going on with them. And trust me, I don't always have the patience for it, but even being able to give them space to get through and smile at them while they're doing it. It could also be a way in which you look at your community and say, okay, I care very deeply about food insecurity or human trafficking or animal rescue, and you either choose to donate, whether it's financially or your time, or you add that organization to your prayer list. I think there are so many ways that we transform the world that we don't think about. I think, unfortunately, people think about transformation and they think it has to be this huge thing. Like, I'm going to commit my life to this, or I'm going to give up all my worldly possessions and I'm going to go down this path. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. And I think that's really one of my messages is I want people to see that we can transform our lives, our communities, and the lives of those around us by sharing whatever we have capacity to share right now. And that capacity is going to vary from day to day, minute to minute, and throughout the different seasons of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Angela, you and I both share a passion for promoting an inclusive culture for
Yes.
folks with disabilities. As you know, I have cerebral palsy, and I work with organizations to better infuse the hiring of folks with disabilities. So, how do you think we can create a better inclusive culture for people that look like me to succeed at work? What are your thoughts there?
I love that. First of all, I love it. I think it's amazing. One of the most rewarding projects I did, I had a client here in Houston called Center for Pursuit. And they really have an amazing job and vocational placement agency. They do a lot of job skills training. And I got to go to a bunch of different employers who were employing people like yourself, people with intellectual developmental disabilities, and really speak to those employers. And I think it comes down to helping employers understand and really doing the advocacy work with employers. Like, listen, someone with any type of disability, intellectual developmental disability can add so much value to your workplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to create the systems for them. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I mean, sorry, I was going to say this. Like, I had at Center for Pursuit, one of the women I worked with there. This is one of my favorite stories. She's blind, and she's their data analyst.
yeah, you
So
never.
she's able to. They have special screens for her and special everything, and she is the best data analyst I've ever met in my life, and she's completely blind.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry that we were cutting in and out, but
Oh, sorry.
I got the gist of it because it's important to know that those it's important to give employers the education they need to make those decisions, isn't it?
100%, 100%. And I think, to your point, unfortunately, you're in a population of people that gets overlooked. You're so much more capable than probably 90% of the people out there. And I think we really need to do a better job of helping employers understand that IDD folks are perfectly capable of fulfilling your jobs and doing an amazing job for you.
Absolutely. And you know, Angela, I'm a big believer in the power of making sort of what I call a transformational moment of difference because I believe that everyone is put on earth to make a transformational difference, and it's incumbent upon all of us to find uh, sort of our lane in life to make a difference. So, what do you think it means to discover your transformational moment of difference and really lean into your strength as an individual? What are your thoughts there?
Honestly, I'd be interested in hearing your answer to this question because I think for you, it's probably very different than it is for me. I mean, you show up every day and you represent a community and you represent everything that your community and people with cerebral palsy are capable of doing and giving back. And I think, I find that to be so beautiful. I think for someone who's a typical person like me, um, I think it's a matter of figuring out like what is the thing that you really are gifted with. And for me, I can say that one thing is leadership. I've always been a very strong leader. It comes up in like every personality test I take, whether it's secular or religious, and really embracing that leadership and finding ways to empower others to find their own leader within. So for me, that was my transformational quality, so to speak, that I really embraced and have tried to bring forward. And I think everybody has that, whether it's service, whether it's leadership, whether it's compassion. So, what is it within you that is your God given strength? And then, how can you not only impart it to others, but teach others to find that same quality within themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Angela, in the spirit of sharing, I'll answer the question. So I look at life as a standard deck of playing cards. Everyone in life is given a standard deck of cards, and it's my belief that we are all responsible for sort of shuffling our deck of cards in the direction that we wanted to go. I found out at 9 years old, Angela, that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. But I always tell people I can either make my circumstances work for me or I can work for my circumstances. So I always try to make my circumstances work for me instead of the reverse. So that's how I would answer that question as well.
I think that's beautiful. And I think, everybody has their circumstance. When you think about, none of us choose the life we're born to. None of us choose the body that we're born to. And none of us really have control over those aspects of our lives, especially early on as children. But to your point, it's up to you what you decide to do with them. And when you think about, your circumstances, I mentioned I work with foster kids. I have this foster kiddo. She's had the worst, just a horrible, horrible life until recently. And when I sit and talk with her, she'll just say to me, she's like, well, I don't really have anything to complain about. She just recently got adopted. She's in part of this loving family, and she looks back on her life as, to your point, kind of circumstances she was in, but she always made the very best of everything that she had. She's a straight A student. She's going to go on to college. And I think a lot of people might have looked at that situation very differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I tell people about having a disability is that there's no 50% off policy, right? So you have to make the best of the lot you're given. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. The other thing that I will say too, I don't know what it is, but if we talked long enough, Kevin, we can find out. I volunteered when I was a kid. I worked for 1 week, I was a camp counselor at a special needs camp, and it was for adults with special needs. And I had really never been around special needs people at all. I was part of that generation of people in school where special needs children were segregated from typical children. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'd never had that experience. So now I'm a camp counselor, and we had, I think, 40 adults there with disabilities. The thing that I learned that week, and I'm so grateful I learned this when I was 16 or 15, I guess I was 15. Um, every person there, and I guarantee you, you have it too. You have one quality or skill that far exceeds anything I could ever do, at least one, possibly more, because I think typical people were just, maybe we do 4 or 5 things kind of mediocre, but for you, you have a broader spectrum than what I have. And I guarantee, I don't know what it is, Kevin, but you have a gift that far outshines that same quality in anyone else.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And I know that one of your gifts is the gift of writing because I know that you've written a book and it's the bestseller. And it's called Are You on the Right Bus? Navigating Change on the Road to Success. So tell me about the book, why you wrote it, and the message you're hoping people take away from it.
Thank you. Yes, I wrote the book because I have a kind of a different background. I, grew up just kind of a middle class kid in Iowa, and I didn't have big, grandiose plans for my life. But somewhere along the way, I had a variety of different people who believed in me, who had just a lot of faith and confidence in me and what I could do. And I really just borrowed their confidence in me to test the waters until I had confidence in myself. Then one day I was speaking at this event for a group of high school students, and I was there to speak about entrepreneurship because I own my business. And at the end of my talk on entrepreneurship, one of the kids asked me, what do you do when your parents want you to pursue something practical, but it's not something you're passionate about? And I kind of realized in that moment, I started thinking about, Kevin, all those people that we meet who hate their jobs,
I do, absolutely. Yeah.
right? There's a million people out there, they hate it. Yet every day they get up and they slog off to these jobs that they hate, waiting for this magical time when they retire and they can finally start to pursue their interests and their goals and give back to the community. And I kind of thought about that with what this kid was asking me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I decided at an early age that I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't just going to work some job so I could make a living and hope that one day I can enjoy my life. I decided when I was, 18 years old that I was going to go to college and major in something that I was really passionate about, and others would see that passion in me and the rest would work itself out. And I thought, if I can put my life story down on paper and inspire even one person, one student, one person working a job that they hate, to realize that you're just on a bus. At any given time, you can pull the cord, you can get off that bus and go and take a whole different bus line. right? You can do something entirely different with your life. You're not stuck. It's not like it's not like you're flying and the plane can't stop midair. We're on buses all day long, and you can at any given time switch seats or pull the cord and get off and do something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angela, I also wanted to ask you about the notion of equality. I firmly believe that it's incumbent upon all of us to sort of contribute to the notion of progress and move the needle of progress forward. So I'm curious to ask you about what do you think it'll take for us to really take that lens of equality in the business to open up a more prosperous opportunity for everyone involved. What are your thoughts there?
My thoughts there, Kevin, is that this has to start early on. I love the push to equality. I love the push to DEI, but it's happening too late in people's lives. We need to be helping kids that are in school right now have the same opportunities across the board, across socioeconomic status, across, race. We need to be giving the same level of empowerment to a kid at a public school that we are at a private school. I think those of us who, and I put myself in this category, full-fledged, I'm a privileged white woman, and I know that, but I take my time, I spend my free time working with people in at-risk communities and promoting people who may not have gotten a promotion, teaching people how to advocate for themselves in the workplace, and then helping them, connect with resources so that they can teach their children to be more confident. I'm a huge believer in reading. Obviously, I wouldn't have written a book if I didn't believe in reading. But some of the programs that I've started at a nonprofit I've been running really are centered around not only empowering adults to read and to realize that their power is within, but also then to help them pass that back on to their children. I think for us to reach equality in the workplace, we have to have younger generations believing that they deserve to be equal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Angela, we've reached the point of our conversation where I'm really excited to ask you about your consulting company because, I serve on the board of directors for Habitat for Humanity here in Windsor, and I'm a part of their fundraising and communication subcommittee. So I know that you've done a lot of work in maximizing the fundraising capability and showing nonprofits how to manage their fundraising dollars more effectively and so that they can be more strategic and generous. So tell me all about maximizing fundraising dollars and the importance of making every dollar stretch. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I started Broad Oaks Consulting because I wanted to have a greater impact. I was captive to a nonprofit and I was very good at raising money. I love raising money. For me, it's giving people an opportunity to have the kind of lasting legacy and impact on their communities that they want to have. So I've always loved fundraising, and I started my company because I wanted to be able to impact more nonprofits than just the one I was working for. When I started in the business, I really thought I was going to do more of like the advanced gift planning work because of my background in wealth management. But when I got in with my first client, which was an anti-human trafficking client here in Houston called The Landing, I realized that these smaller nonprofits, and Habitat for Humanity I love the organization. It's amazing, but it's huge, right? And 92% of nonprofits operate on a budget of less than $1 million a year. So what I wanted to do was to work with these small nonprofits to teach them, it's not the basics of fundraising, but it's the foundation. Like, what do they need to have foundationally so that they can grow their year over year revenue, not a capital campaign, nothing outside of that, but how can they grow incrementally every single year to ensure that they'll be around for generations to come or until we eradicate all of these social issues. So I've developed this program. I have a couple of different downlines in Broad Oaks certainly I work with the more advanced organizations teaching their gift officers about advanced gift planning and plan giving and all of that. But my passion around this is working with these small nonprofits, teaching them how to tell their story, having that clear, concise message where when you land on their webpage, within 0.07 seconds, you know what they do, the impact they have, and how you can get involved. And then teaching them how to fundraise on the back end through their marketing, their communications, their donor stewardship, how to manage their data effectively to really help people feel connected to their mission. So we're really all about clarifying the story and setting nonprofits up to be able to repeat that sales cycle over and over and over again so that they'll be around for generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angela, what's your background in nonprofits? I'm curious to ask you, what do you think is the key to making sure that the sector remains financially and societally viable for years to come? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's twofold. I think first and foremost, we need to do a better job as the nonprofit sector of educating people on the value of nonprofits. When you really think about it, our ability to live and work in communities in which we want to be is really centered around nonprofits. The answer to the call for every major societal issue is answered by nonprofits. And some people say, like, oh, well, my tax dollars go towards this or my tax dollars go towards that. But by and large, money that's allocated from your taxes to help with, floods or to help with even with the pandemic, with rent assistance, that's allocated, but then nonprofits apply for that funding and they're the ones that distribute it and they're the ones that offer programs. So as a society, especially in America, if you were born in a public hospital, if you attended a public school, if you go to any sort of faith-based organization, whether it's a mosque or a synagogue or a church, your life is being impacted by nonprofits. Now, we are one of the most generous countries in the nation, but the reality is that we could all do a little bit more. So I think, one, it's helping the public understand the true value of nonprofits and how they enrich our lives and the communities in which we live. And then I think the second part of it is really from a nonprofit perspective, going back to what I was talking about before, we have to be able to tell our story. You get all these, and like you're a prime example. You sit on a nonprofit board. Nonprofit boards are full of these wonderful business people who make great decisions for their businesses all day long. Decisions to invest in marketing, decisions to pay their employees a fair wage. Yet somehow you get on a nonprofit board and it's like, well, how can we do more with less? How can we pay our people less? Let's not invest in marketing. Let's not invest in all these things. So I think from a nonprofit perspective, we have to be saying, listen, we're a different tax status and we have a different purpose. Like our purpose isn't to enrich our shareholders, but our purpose is to enrich our communities. And in order to do that, we need to pick up some of the modeling that we see in our for-profit counterparts to make our missions known.
Yeah, absolutely. And Angela, I'm curious to ask you, what's your definition of social purpose, and how do you think it's interconnected to making a transformative impact on the world? So how do you think those two things are interconnected?
I was thinking about this question a lot as I read through it because I think it's interesting. To me, I would define your social purpose individually. What is each of our social purposes? My social purpose is going to be very different from yours based on my skills, abilities, and the places in which I choose to insert myself in life. And then how does that relate back to our, overall responsibility? Well, when you're thinking about your purpose in your social circle, you have the ability to transform the way people think, the way they act, the way that they ultimately decide what they're going to do with their free time or their discretionary income. So I think each of us has our own kind of social purpose. And when we're really executing that purpose and we're hitting it on all cylinders, it naturally translates into transforming the community around us.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about innovation in the nonprofit sector, I'm Curious, how do you view that concept of innovation in the nonprofit sector, and what do you think is the keys to effectively implementing sort of the innovative side of the nonprofit sector?
This is such a fascinating question to me because the truth is that there are only so many ways to give money, right? And so sometimes I talk to clients or prospective clients and they're like, well, we want to be in on the cutting edge of how people are giving these days. And certainly it's grown and it's expanded. You can give with cryptocurrency, you can give with, stocks, you can give tangible property. There are a lot of different ways to give outside of just cash, but they're all finite. So I think the true innovation in philanthropy lies in how we're utilizing technology to connect our donors with our mission. The thing that, if you really look back, people used to give because they believed it was a great mission. I mean, people give to Habitat for Humanity because they love what you do. Now, people want to know more about how their resources are being used, right? How much of it is going to program? How much is going to staff? How many houses are being built? Who's living in the houses? How many bedrooms do they have? What neighborhoods are they in? What's is it an opportunity zone? Like, everybody wants all this data. To a certain degree, we can outdata ourselves, but I think the real innovation for nonprofits lies in taking that data and creating a better user experience for donors so that they really feel that connection between what they're giving, whether it's time, whether it's, some of their talent or treasure, they feel that connection back to the nonprofit.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you think inclusivity and the idea of resilience are tied to nonprofits and life as well? What are your thoughts on the linkage between inclusivity and resilience?
So I have to tell you, my mind was blown last year on the idea of inclusivity with nonprofits by a foundation. And this is interesting. So I've been, in addition to writing the book and running the business, I've also been acting as the executive director of a nonprofit here in Houston for the last 4 years. And a foundation that actually didn't even give us a grant took the time to come and visit with me about the grant process. And one of the things that they brought up, they said, how many of the people that you've served, and this nonprofit, it's called Raise Up Families, and we work with people living on the edge of homelessness to stabilize them in their homes so that their kids can experience a continuous education. But their question was, how are the people that you're serving benefiting your nonprofit? And I thought to myself, well, this is a ridiculous question. Like, they're not benefiting the nonprofit, they're getting services from us. But it sat there in the back of my head. And beyond just looking for candidates outside of, the typical diversity categories, I started to think like, well, how should the people that we serve be actively serving our nonprofit? So now so many of our former client families are coming back. They're volunteering, they're mentoring other families. They're some of them even give financially. And so as I started to think about this idea of diversity, I really realized that so many nonprofits, and there's this great book out there called Toxic Charity. We're so interested in giving so much, we're not thinking about how we can empower the people that we're serving to give back.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the idea of social responsibility and nonprofits often gets sort of intermingled. So what are your thoughts on your definition of social responsibility for nonprofits and the role they play in the sector's health, my friend, in terms of being socially responsible and cognizant to serving their audiences that they are intended to serve? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that social responsibility really goes back to, and I'd have to look up and see who the author is, but the book is Toxic Charity. And we as nonprofits, we have a social responsibility to create communities in which people can thrive and to create communities in which, there is a more fair, just, and equitable world. Unfortunately, a lot of nonprofits, and especially you see this more in other nations, it's kind of become a culture in which we're just we're giving, right? We're just handing out. It's a handing out culture rather than an empowering and enabling culture. And I think you see this a lot in church groups, or you see, people want to go do a service project for 1 week. Well, building somebody, for example, what was that other book with Charity Water? I read his book and it was fascinating. They built all these wells and then realized that they didn't teach the people how to maintain the wells. So then the wells stopped working. So people got fresh water, but then a year later, the well wasn't being used. So then they had to go back and actually teach the people living in these communities that had gotten a well how to maintain their well and how to keep it going over time. So I think that's something that we as nonprofits, we really have to look at. Am I just giving a hand out, or am I actually giving a hand up?
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you about the idea of inclusive leadership because, as you know, there are many different styles of leadership, and if I can be honest with you, some people are better leaders than others.
Yes, agreed.
And I think that empathy is a big part of at least inclusive leadership. And I'm fascinated to ask you about how we can create a better sense of elite leaders that use inclusion as sort of their guiding principle.
Oh, that's a great question. I think we need to sort of redefine leadership to understand that it's a service role. A leader isn't, the person at the top, the boss making all of the decisions. The leader is the person serving the people who are entrusted to your care as employees, as clients, as like you look at Habitat. I think one of the great things with Habitat is that people have a vested interest. They have skin in the game in building their homes. And I think we need to redefine leadership to realize it's a servant role. And so to create inclusive leadership, we need to look to the people that we're serving and say, how can I lift you up? How can I help you become the best you can be in your role to really blossom, and to realize that just because you may say something with different words in a different way than I do, it doesn't make your way wrong and my way right, or vice versa. We all have these unique lenses that we're looking at organizations and communities through, and really understanding that we need to empower people who come from different backgrounds and people who have different experiences to be the voice for our organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in the few minutes that I have left with you, I've got two more questions, and I want to dive into the notion of effective fundraising because, there are multiple ways to ask people for money, but there is also an art to sustaining the ability to ask over and over again. So if I was to ask you to create a commercial on the top three things that any nonprofit can do to create a sustainable fundraising model, what do you think you would emphasize in the commercial?
The first thing I would emphasize is your message. You have to have a clear, concise message that invites people to become part of changing lives and saving lives. The second thing I would say is donor stewardship. You have to thank people. I mean, it is interesting. It's an interesting exercise to give even, $25 to 10 different charities and see how they react to your gift. And as nonprofits, we really need to appreciate the fact that no one's under any obligation to give a nonprofit money. And so I don't care if it's $10, I don't care if it's $10,000, you thank those donors and you let them know how their gift is making a difference. And then the third thing really comes down to the same notion of stewardship. Kevin, I also teach with the Institute for Charitable Giving, so I'm definitely a disciple of Gerald Panis and Bill Sturdivant. But Jerry Panis used to say, you cannot ask for another gift unless you've thanked your donor 7 times. And I truly believe that. I think that we get into this asking culture. The other thing that drives me crazy is I can't tell you how many planning meetings I've sat in and heard, directors of advancement and CEOs and EDs say, well, Kevin should give us $50,000 because he's worth whatever he's worth. Kevin's under no obligation to do anything. Like, I got news for you, right? So you really need to show people how much you appreciate them and allow them to connect back with your mission before you go in for that next ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Think twice and ask only once, right? Now,
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
Exactly.
So, Angela, talking to you for the last half hour or so, I can see that you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm for life. And I have to tell you, one of the greatest things for me about life is the ability to celebrate, all that life has to offer. I shared it with you at the beginning of our conversation that my birthday was Monday, and I'm now 35, and being halfway to 70 now, I've done a lot of reflecting on what I want my legacy and my mission statement to be at the end of my book of life. So tell me, what is it that you want your mission statement to read at the end of your life when people reflect back on your legacy? What do you want your mission statement to say about your life?
I want people to, kind of my hope or dream at my funeral, I guess, would be is that, and who knows, maybe by the time I die, people won't go to funerals anymore, but I would love for people to say that they became more than they ever thought they could be as a result of having known me. And I think that's always been my big, I took my first leadership role when I was 25, and I really felt in that moment that when you become a leader, when you embrace leadership as a role and as an identifying marker, that your greatest goal is to help people become more than they ever thought they could be. So I think that's ultimately the legacy I'm trying to leave behind, is that I think it's within all of us to empower others to be the best version of themselves. And that's what I'm driving towards.
Angela, I had a great time having a chat with you today. So tell me, if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Absolutely. So if you're interested in learning more about my unconventional path to success in entrepreneurship, you can purchase my book at Amazon in hardback, paperback, or Kindle, and the audiobook should be released sometime in the next month. It's also available on Barnes & Noble. And then you can connect with me on social. I am on LinkedIn, Instagram, and on Facebook under Broad Oaks Consulting, and also under my name, Angela Burgess. So you can connect with me there. You could also visit my website, which is broadoaksconsulting.com. And if you want to start a conversation about a nonprofit or speaking opportunity, there's a start the conversation button right on the website.
Well, I want to have this conversation on my podcast, and I can't thank you enough for the good work that you do to move the needle of progress forward. I was super excited to record this podcast and have this conversation. The work that you're doing is truly inclusively transformational, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me about how we can move the societal needle of progress forward. Your work in the space of nonprofits and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed our time together as well.